Today we have a showdown between the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G and the new Samsung Galaxy A14 5G. Now the first thing I want to talk about is the specs on these devices. Now you do need to know, specs are not everything, and to my surprise, the A14 5G, which costs a lot less and has worse specs, it actually performed way better than I expected throughout my time with it. So I will say specs are not everything, but we do want to talk about how these phones stack up against one another. So first off, the A53 5G is a 6.5 inch screen with a 2400 by 1080 resolution. Now the A14 5G on the other hand, it's a 6.6 inch screen with a slightly better resolution because the screen's a little bit larger. It's a 2408 by 1080 resolution. Now you do have an OLED display on the A53 5G, so that does give this an advantage as far as how nice the screen is, and it does have a 120 Hz screen, while this has a 90 Hz screen, and it is not an OLED display. Now, both of these devices have 5,000 milliamp batteries, so the devices have very good battery life. Now, as far as performance goes, I do have to mention a couple of interesting details, and I will say, I will clear all this up if you're not big into specs and what they mean. I'm going to give you all the details from a normal human perspective. But I will say there are two different variants of the A14 5G. This phone has a variant that's actually overseas that comes with an Exynos processor, and there is a variant in the US that actually has a MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. Now the A53 5G on the other hand has an Exynos processor. It's an Exynos 1280. Both devices, by the way, in the base models have 4 GB of RAM. There are variants that can go up to 8 GB of RAM, but the A53 5G, it is supposed to perform a little bit better, but realistically, I found that they performed nearly identically, but the one issue I had bottlenecking the A53 5G was just these random freezing issues. It wasn't very often, but on rare occasion, the phone would start to stutter and freeze, and yes, the A14 5G could do that a little bit off and on, but it was happening a little bit more often with my A53 5G, so the performance was a little bit more consistent on the A14 5G, and on this, it is supposed to be a little bit faster with what's in it, but outside of those little specs, look, you do have a little bit of a better camera. It's a 64 megapixel camera here in this device, and on this device, the A14 5G, it is a 50 megapixel camera. Now you do get a quad camera setup on the A53 compared to a triple camera setup on the A14, but other than that, there aren't really a ton of differences, but there are a lot of differences in the minor details on these devices, and it really does start off with the design. So the A14 5G actually has a headphone jack, which is really awesome, but on the negative side, it only has one mono speaker. Now the A53, it has dual speakers, and it does sound a little bit more clear and a little bit louder, and there is no headphone jack on that, so it really depends on who you are as far as what you prefer. Another thing is the fingerprint sensor. The A53 5G has a fingerprint sensor in the screen, and I have found that to be very reliable, even with a tempered glass screen protector. Now the A14 5G on the other hand, it has a fingerprint sensor in the button, in the power button, and it is very reliable as well, but it is going to feel a little bit cheaper. Even the power button on occasion, it might just make a little squeaky sound, right? Because this is made of a little bit of cheaper materials. If you even feel in the back, there is a really unique textured material, which some people will like. It still will be a little bit slippery, but it's a unique plastic design on both of these devices, but I will say the A53, it does feel a little bit more premium in my hands. I do like the feel of it a lot more than the A14 5G. So the design and the build quality, it's a little bit better on the A53 5G, but a lot of you are just going to throw cases on these devices anyway, and some of you are actually going to prefer having a headphone jack, which is really cool. Now both devices, you can put a micro SD card in them. That is a big benefit, but other than that, the designs are very interesting. They're very similar, but that's where something has to be considered, and that is price. So we are comparing these two devices, and yes, if you are on a lot of prepaid carriers, this A53 5G, not to be mistaken with a regular A53, there are some variants of this device, but this device will go on sale at a lot of prepaid carriers, and that will make these devices similar in price. But if we do compare them, because after all, the A14 is going to go on sale a lot too, right? So if we compare both of these devices as far as retail price, this device retails at $500 in the US compared to the A14 only being $200. So that is a monstrous difference. We're talking a $300 difference. So minor design differences or feeling slightly more premium. That's not exactly worth $300 now, is it, right? So we have to be fair in this comparison. And honestly, if you're looking for a good bang for your buck, I can already tell you the A14 5G, I think, is a better winner as far as price. However, if you do look in the used market, you may find a little bit of a better bang for your buck with the A53 5G. Now, if we look beyond just the design and we go to performance, you are going to see that, again, these devices do perform very well, and I was blown away. I mean, I was shocked at how good the performance was on my A14 because this device, it has a Exynos processor. It's only $200. So I was expecting to hate this device because I do use a lot of flagship devices, but I try when I'm reviewing devices to put myself in the mind of someone who would really want to spend $200 on a phone. I like to review phones, it's fun, but if I was someone who was looking for a deal, who was looking to save some money, I try to put myself in that mind state because it's not fair to review a $200 phone from a $1,000 perspective. However, when I did review this, I was shocked anyway. Even when I tried to put myself with lower expectations, I was still blown away because the A14, it didn't really freeze whenever I was using it for much of anything. It was a very consistent experience. Of course, I did have to get the setup process done. I did have to turn some minor things off like autoplay. If you're trying to autoplay videos on Facebook or on Twitter, that can slow down a little bit your experience, but I turned those things off. I downloaded all my apps, and when I did, I had a very shockingly consistent experience on the A14. And it was just really impressive. Like, things were not slowing down for me. Sure, I had to wait an extra half second compared to some higher end phones, but it still worked very, very well for me. Now, the A53 5G, it was a little bit quicker because it does have a 120 Hz refresh rate, so the refreshing of the screen, it just smoothly scrolled a little bit faster. But on the other hand, the performance, even though it's supposed to be faster with the processor, and sometimes it did feel a little bit faster, I did have a few freezes, and it was almost like the display was having issues. So it's possible that my unit's defective, or it's possible that the Exynos processor was overheating a little bit. Maybe it was throttling itself, and in that process, it was causing some freezing. That is probably the most likely outcome in my opinion. And yes, I did get this A53, I did get it used, so that is another thing to keep in mind. However, I do think it's a fair comparison because this device has not been out all that long. I did get one in decent condition at least, so I will say that when I did compare them neck and neck, I was pretty shocked to find that the performance, if I was going head to head, I would say it was pretty equal. I got a little bit better consistency on the A14, and I did get a little bit of better performance on the A53. And for me, the performance was good enough on the A14 that I would actually prefer using it even with a slower processor on the day-to-day. Now again, the 120 Hz screen is really nice. That is something that a lot of you will like. However, realistically, day-to-day, there weren't a lot of differences there. Now, if we look at other things, battery life, I'd say battery life has been pretty similar with both devices. Both devices have 5,000 milliamp batteries. Now, you are going to get a little bit of better efficiency, in my opinion, from the A14 because you don't have that 120 Hz refresh rate. So overall, the battery, it's good on both. I really enjoyed the battery life, and it's going to be a lot better than a lot of other $500 phones out there. Even $300 or $400 phones, or phones like the Google Pixel 6a, both of these devices should have better battery life, which is a big plus. Now, as far as other features, you are going to get better water resistance on the A53 5G, and that is not something to laugh about. Water resistance is a pretty big deal. Now, both phones come with NFC, which is surprising to see in a $200 phone. I really like that. That does allow you to use things like Google Pay or Samsung Pay, and it actually works on a cheaper phone. I was very shocked about that. So if I compare the experience and even the small things as far as charging, this device will charge with 25 watts. This device will charge with 15 watts. shots. However, maybe it was just me, but they seemed to charge at about the same speed, and they both seemed a little bit slow as far as charging speeds. So I don't think it's a really big difference between the two. There's no wireless charging on either of these phones. And the one other thing to compare is the cameras. So the cameras, I am not a great camera comparison person where I get perfect shots of both devices, taking pictures at the same time or the same angle. But I will say that the camera is going to be better overall on the A53 5G. And I would say by a decent margin, right? This is going to be a device that retails again at about $500, at least for the unlocked version in the US, if you just buy it outright. And that is going to get you better pictures than a cheaper device like this. You're also going to get 4K video on this compared to 1080p video, which is a big difference if you actually prefer 4K. But if you're someone who doesn't take a ton of pictures, you will still get decent pictures at least out of this. When I say decent, it's all about expectations, right? If decent is the Google Pixel 680, this will not be as good as a Google Pixel phone. However, it will still take decent pictures around $200 if you compare it to other devices at that price point. So overall, if I compare these two devices, I am rather shocked with the results. Yes, the design feels a little more premium on this phone, but this does have a headphone jack, which does offset some of that. On the other hand, this does perform slightly better with the processor, but this device is a little more consistent with the performance. Now, this device does have an OLED screen and 120 Hz, and I won't deny that is going to give you a better looking screen than this, and the blacks are a little more black on this, the colors are a little bit better and a little more vibrant. So yes, the screen is a good consideration if you're going between these two phones, but outside of the screen and a little bit of better build quality and the water resistance, I just don't see a lot of reasons to pick up the A53 5G over this. Now, I will say the A54 5G may come out soon, and that may be a game changer. A lot of you might prefer that, but that device won't go on sale for quite a bit. I'm sure when it releases, it will release at a high price. It will take a while to start going on sale, and for those of you who are on a budget, I would highly recommend the A14 5G in this comparison. Look, I make a little bit of money on affiliate links. If you click on my affiliate links, that does help to support my channel. So I don't make more money selling a cheaper device, but I'm going to be honest with you as far as which device I prefer. And I do think the A14 5G, with its recent release, it's actually shockingly good. And the other thing that I loved, I made a review on this, a full review on this device, and I have to say one of my favorite things is that this phone actually has a proximity sensor now. That little sensor in a phone that makes it go black when you're on the phone and makes the screen shut off. That's a sensor that they were actually taking out of cheaper phones to save a little bit of money. And they were just relying on the software to figure out, or maybe your GPS or other parts of the phone. And it was a little inconsistent. So my phone was waking up on occasion when I used some cheaper devices. But this device, on the other hand, it actually has that proxy sensor. It actually has NFC, which a lot of older, cheaper devices didn't have. And a lot of older A devices, they did not have even a 1080p screen. So this has a nice looking screen, even if it's not OLED. It has a 90 Hz screen with a better refresh rate. And it has consistent performance for the price. Of course, if you're a gamer, you are going to get a little bit of a better experience on the A53. If you want a little bit of a better screen, or you want a little bit of a better feeling phone that feels a little bit more premium, the sides feel a little bit better on this phone. The back, it does feel a little bit better overall. It feels less cheap. So sure, there are some reasons to pick the A53 5G, and if you find it on sale and it's close in price, I would say for most of you, it's a good choice. However, for the money, by far the best bargain is the A14 5G. The pictures on it might not be the best. The device might not have all the best strengths, but overall, when I look at the overall package, it is a great deal for the money, and I would highly recommend it. So thank you all for watching this comparison video. I hope you liked it. Please give me a like and give me a sub. That would mean a lot to my channel. Also, if you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you want to watch some of my reviews, like my review on the A14 5G, feel free to check that out as well. I will have that as an option to watch, and it's a great video, by the way, with a lot of good details. So thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you enjoy your week, and use those links in the description, by the way, if you want to purchase one of these phones. That's a great way to help me out. So have a great day, and thank you.
much.